time is so very important to us. It's valuable. It's measured in hourly rates of time. Time is truly, though, a priceless commodity in our lives. What do you say to a friend who asks you, "What time is it?" It defies definition by and large. Our attempts to explain it tend to fall back almost immediately upon divisions of time, such as seconds and minutes and hours, or days and weeks and months and years. Millions will watch tonight as the ball of lights drops in Times Square, counting down the final minutes and seconds of 2017. Those are divisions of time that we humans have made up, however. Before ever there were clocks to measure time, it existed. The time of day and years were measured differently, but they existed as surely as they do today. Time differs by culture and individuals. According to a report published by the Iowa State University, there are two basic variations. There's monochronic individuals, and they are those who prefer to complete one task at a time. For them, task-oriented time is distinguished from social-emotional time. In other words, there is a time to play and a time to work, and you don't mix the two. Maybe the writer of Ecclesiastes chapter 3 had a monochronic sense of time. There is a season for this and a season for that kind of thing. These individuals value punctuality, completing tasks, and keeping to schedules. They view time as if it were linear. That is, one event happening at a time. And examples of monochronic cultures include the United States, for the most part, South Korea, Japan, Israel, Germany, and Switzerland. All fit this kind of monochronic sense of time. But some individuals are more polychronic individuals, or they look at time as more flexible, and they're more flexible about time schedules. They have no problem integrating task-oriented activities with social-emotional ones. In other words, for them, you can work and play at the same time. For them, maintaining relationships and socializing are more important than accomplishing a certain task. These individuals usually see time in a holistic manner. In other words, many events may happen all at one time. Multitaskers often fit this bill, but not always. And some of the cultures around the world that may have a more polychronic sense of time are Latin America, the Far East in some places, and Africa are places where the polychronic orientation often prevails. Now, it's important for us to say at the start that one of these ways is not better than the other way. That one of these ways is not more preferred than the other way. In monochronic time, getting things done is important, but you may never learn how to really have a relationship with somebody because it's all about the minutes and seconds. You may have met the type of person who you start to have a conversation with, and before you know it, they've walked you out the door, and your conversation is over, and they're back to their task, and you felt like you never got to know the person. They never got to know you. There were no relationships. So there's a good part that this person gets things done. The bad part might be that they don't have any relationships with people to go through. Polychronic people, on the other hand, are the kind of person that's always available to talk to you, always available to have that conversation, never walk you out the door, and is always late on getting everything done, or may never get things completely done. But they have great relationships, and so there's a trade-off in these senses of time. Well, we fall back on our sense of time when we think about what time it is and how things are going in our lives. We comment on how time seems to pass so much faster as we get older, right? When we were children, sitting in a minute was forever. It felt like we were never going to get through that period of silence or whatever it was for a minute. And the older we get, an hour feels like it went by like a minute. A day feels like it went by like an hour. And pretty soon, years feel like they went by like a week. And time seems to speed up for us. Even though, as we all know, it stays as constant as ever, right? Well, none of this defines time. It only speaks of how we experience time in our lives. It can become an obsession for some people. Punctuality for some people is an obsession. Don't be late. We'll begin without you. We'll dock your pay. You're unreliable. You're lazy if you're not on time. And being on time for the person who celebrates and is obsessed with punctuality is what? Arriving 5 minutes before the thing was supposed to begin, right? So if you have a meeting at 12, you're there at 11:55, right? Not 12, not 59, not 12:01, but 11:55. Then you're on time, right? That is obsessive punctuality. And some people are saying, it's not obsessive, it's what I practice every day. It's obsessive punctuality. Time is relevant to the person. And again, there is not one right or wrong way about viewing time. There are certainly systems that use time, right? So if you want to go argue to your boss when you go back to work on Tuesday after the holiday that coming in 3 minutes late was okay because your preacher said so, go ahead and try it, but we're pretty sure you're going to be unemployed before the end of the month. There's also an obsession with time in terms of how much time we have, scarcity. There's too much to do and too little time to do it. There's not much time left, we say, to be a child or as a single person or before we face the real world if we're a young person, before your nest is empty if we're a middle-aged adult, or your employment ends or unemployment insurance runs dry, or before the bank forecloses or before your career closes and retirement begins, before your health declines, before you run out of days, as though time were a commodity that we could possess and use or spend. But the reality is, time is its own thing. And whether we think we possess it or not, it just marches on the same every day. And then there's the abundance of time we talked about. We have too much time on our hands. Not too many of us with that, but we'll say that if we don't have something to do, especially younger generations, within a couple minutes, we're bored. We're bored. I used to hear that a lot from my young men. We're bored. I'm bored. I'm so bored, Dad. And as you get older, there may be some boredom, but usually there's enough responsibilities that boredom takes a back seat. We say of mischief is that idle hands are the devil's tools, says an Old English proverb. It's not biblical, by the way. It's an Old English proverb that idle hands are the devil's tools. That if you have too much time on your hands, you're going to get in trouble. So we create all kinds of programs for young people and youth all over our communities. For what? To keep them busy. Because we think if we keep them busy, then they won't be out doing things that really will have to go and deal with them with that we don't want them doing in our community, right? And so, but then we say if we have too much time, we might end up with depression. That if we have so much time on our hands and so much boredom and not enough to do, we might get depressed. And then we also talk about time and commodities in terms of abundance, that when we have a lot of time, that's when we're able to travel and have vacations and enjoy art and leisure, because those things also originate when we have more time. When we seem to have more time, it's when we might take up an art or a craft in our life, for instance. And then there's the whole idea of patience around time, right? When will this sermon ever end, right? It seems like forever before you turn 16 and you get your driver's license, you go on your first date. When will the traffic light ever turn green? Will dinner ever be ready? When will the preacher ever be finished? I already said that. How will you endure this particular illness? Make it better now. I don't want to be told that I'm going to get better in a couple weeks. I want it done in 24 hours. So time is so important to us in so many ways. Tomorrow, New Year's Day, is all about time, right? It's time to begin anew, to reset or replace the calendar, to move forward to day one of the future that we are about to journey through together. New Year's Day, as we currently celebrate it, is as past of the Gregorian calendar. It's a part of the Gregorian calendar, which was proposed in the 16th century as a reform of the Julian calendar, and is the most widely used calendar today. It's based on the solar year, the actual length of time it takes the Earth to revolve around the sun. And so it moved away from the idea that the Earth was the center of the universe and moved to the idea that the sun was the center of our solar system, and so we revolve around it. And the month January that we're about to start tomorrow comes from the Roman god of gates and doorways called Janus, and is also the god of beginnings and endings. And so the month of January gets its name there. One blogger wrote, "Doors and thresholds offer us potent symbols of new and unexplored possibilities. They can evoke a sense of powerful potential and both internal and external worlds we have yet to explore." St. Teresa of Avila, the 16th century Carmelite mystic, wrote the classic book, The Interior Castle, in which she likened the soul to a castle made with concentric rooms. And as we deepen our spiritual life, we move further into the interior castle of our souls and discover hidden rooms previously unavailable to us. The Christmas classic and our worship series basis, It's a Wonderful Life, uses the visit of Clarence the Angel, who plunges the main character into the currents of time. George Bailey was introduced to the impact their lives had on the world around them. Some were positive, others destructive. George was already living the truly wonderful life. He just wasn't awake to it. George learned his generosity with his money, his time, and his presence had led to an amazingly rich life of family, friends, and community. As the month of beginnings and endings, January, coming tomorrow, offers us the potential for putting the past behind us and moving forward into the future with God. It is a promise, though, that we celebrate today, that God will walk with us through every season, through the times of new birth and the times of death alike. It's not just another New Year's resolution that we can make that can be broken. It's God's promise that never fails for us. A promise that we get to choose whether or not we want to accept it. We get to choose whether or not we want to accept God's love for us is really stronger than anything we could ever do, wrong or imperfect, the mistakes that we have made. We can choose to accept God's love that is really for us and for everybody else, that nothing can separate any of us, including you, from God's love. Yes, this choice could change your life. It changed George Bailey's life. On the bridge, he's there praying, God, I want to live again, and it changed his life. And we remember the scene when he ran through town wishing Merry Christmas to the rest of Bedford Falls. Our attitude about things can change when we accept the promise that God will not abandon us no matter what comes in time. Joy can guide and strengthen us. Hope can drive us and give us direction. Love can lead us and open our minds to others. And compassion can move us and open our hearts. Justice can empower us and grant us passion for right relationships and honesty. Peace can guard us and allow us to simply be a child of God, forgiven, loved, and free. So we remember, we celebrate as this year changes the words Auld Lang Syne, that literally translate from an old Scottish dialect meaning old long ago, and is about love and friendship in times past. The author of Revelation says, "Look, I am making all things new." And so we welcome in the new year with the promise of God's gift of wonderful life made known to us in Jesus, to embolden us as we look forward to the days, weeks, and months of 2018. And all that's left for us to do is begin it. All that's left for us to do is begin it. So let's begin it, shall we? Amen.